Welcome to all of you if you're signing in as students or graduates. If we've got any staff members, hello to you. And indeed, if anybody's joining us from the wider community, thank you so much for taking your time to join in with us and to listen to our guest speaker today, who is Jason Fernandes. Let me start by introducing myself as well. My name's Lisa Law. I'm one of the career staff here at the university, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Okay, and we've got two other people in this webinar as well. So Claire, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Claire Buckley. I'm Faculty Public Engagement Coordinator. And amongst other things, I work on Artsfest, which you all may know me from. But I've also been working with Lisa on this series of events. And my pronouns are she, her.
And Jason, would you like to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Jason Fernandes. I'm one of the lecturers in the 3D department teaching interior, product and furniture. And my pronouns are he, him, his.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is the second time we've done this. If you haven't joined into Creative Futures in the past, just to briefly explain what it's all about, we have different industry professionals joining us to talk about their creative careers. And that's with a view to getting an insight into what a creative career might look like, the kinds of jobs that people do and what they're like, and crucially, how to break in, how to get that first role. And we're hoping that you'll get a lot of insight from this that you might want to implement in your own career to enable you to make your career a success. In terms of how we're doing it, we're here now until 3. We'll just see how it goes. It might not be an hour session. It might be a little bit shorter than that. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free. We would love your questions to come pouring in. You can do that very easily. If you hover over your Zoom toolbar, you'll see the Q&A feature and you can type your question to us. You can post as yourself or anonymously. It's entirely up to you. We also have the chat feature open as well, and that's so that we can post any web links or information that's relevant to this talk. We are recording as well so that others who haven't been able to attend can have a look at today's session, and also so you can watch it again afterwards. And I'd just like to remind you that this is a public platform, so please don't share anything that's sensitive or confidential. Okay, so I think it's high time that we started talking to Jason. So welcome, Jason. Thank you so much for your time today, sharing your career journey with us. I thought a good way to begin actually would be to hear more about your career journey. So would you be able to just give us an overview from when you came to the UK, I think it was 2002 you said, to study product design, right through to today as a 3D lecturer. Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course. So some of you in the attendees list obviously know me and know my background, but for those of you that don't, I'm originally from Kenya, from a small coastal town called Mombasa, and I studied art, and it was really just art, fine art, that I studied back in school, and that's what led me to get to a design career. I came to the UK in 2002 and started a foundation course at Loughborough University. It was a 1-year course, after which I took a year out, actually, went back to Kenya and did some freelance work for various hotels in the industry that is very big in Mombasa, doing fine art again. And then I came back to the UK to Sheffield, Hallam, and did my BA in product design. After which I went into industry, which was actually quite interesting because I was working for a design company based in Shrewsbury, but it was through a knowledge transfer partnership known as the KTPs, and that was with Wolverhampton University. And it was from that I made these links with the lecturers in the 3D design department. And as my kind of journey went in my career, I landed up doing a master's at University of Wolverhampton in interior design. And that then led me into a completely different path from not just product design, but I was introducing interiors into the companies I worked for. I moved into 2 other companies after that. And then I finally came to University of Wolverhampton 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago. So relatively new to the world of academia. So.
Thank you. I know we've spoken about this previously, but I hadn't quite realised how many different artistic disciplines you've moved in and out of. So there's the product.
That's a good thing, Lisa.
It's interesting, and I think other people perhaps follow the same route where they don't just stick with one discipline. It's several. So for you, product design and interior and fine art as well is part of the mix. So that's really interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about the product design role that you had? Because I think that was your first job once you graduated. Is that right? Can you tell us a bit about what that was like and kinds of things you were doing?
Yeah, so when I finished my university degree, because I was obviously an international student, it was going to be quite a challenging task to get a job in the UK. Because any company I went to would have had to apply for a visa for me. So that was almost my biggest challenge. And actually, while I was at uni, one of my lecturers gave me a little piece of advice, which was very, very important. Some of the students didn't think it was the most appropriate, but he told me that because I was international, I had to work 10 times harder than everyone else. And some people took it that, oh, you shouldn't have said that because it's not right. But it was a fact. And that almost made me understand that I had to put all my effort into this kind of course and try and achieve the best results, because I was going to be competing with not just British graduates, but people who were getting first, incredible competitions that they were winning. But I managed to find one of my peers at university had this application for the KTP. And she was like, I don't really want to move to Shrewsbury or Wolverhampton. She's like, do you want to apply for it? And I literally had 4 months in order to try and gain a job and maintain a job in the UK. So I applied for this job. The requirements needed a driving license, it needed a visa, it needed all these things. And I thought, I'm never going to get this job. But I thought, I'll give it my all. I had a little presentation I had to do. It was about displays. The job was all about estate agent displays. And I thought, okay, I'll go and do some research. So even before I went for the interview, I did my research with various estate agents, found a lot about that process of design and how I was going to present myself to this company. Anyway, I got to the company and the interview was supposed to last 1 hour. It lasted 2 hours because I talk too much. And the supervisors, the bosses, the directors, we just had a great connection. And I was through to the second round of interviews and I got the job, which was fantastic because I think it was about a month before I had to leave the country, and I was able to secure this job. And it was a perfect opportunity because I was linked with the university. I didn't know much about University of Wolverhampton at the time. One of my ex-colleagues now, Dave Henley, was my supervisor. And he kind of took me under his wing with the university side of things, the academia side of things. And it was a fantastic opportunity. But what I realized was everything I knew at university. I was designing baby buggies, I was designing lights, fittings, I was designing various items that had nothing to do with displays. So it was a big kind of change to what I was used to. And it wasn't my dream to go out into the design world and design displays. I thought I was going to be the next big baby buggy designer of the UK. And it didn't happen like that. And there was some element to me that was disappointed and a bit kind of upset that I wasn't achieving as well as I wanted to. But what I did know was, you've got this job, take the most out of it. And I had an incredible boss who started to believe in me. He's probably one of the best bosses I've ever had, because he was the first person that, even when I was at uni, I still had this doubt in myself that I wasn't good enough. I achieved the first, but I still doubted myself as a designer. And it was Nigel Fletcher, my boss, who actually started to push me into these kind of roles. I was a junior designer there, and he started putting me in front of clients. I was only brought in to do new product development, but he kind of instigated this confidence building within me. And until today, I'm still in contact with him, and I have a great deal of respect for him still, because he built that confidence in me to believe that I could actually achieve so much more than just design. So I took all the principles of what I'd learned at university, applied it to the display industry, and that really grew. The great thing about the knowledge transfer partnerships is you get so much of support from the university itself and from the supervisors. So that was a massive kind of help towards not myself, but also the company. And it was interesting because I started doing these displays that were going into office interiors for the estate agency market. And I thought, I'm looking at all the interiors that we're going into, and I want to know more about that. So I had this opportunity to do the master's through the KTP. It was funded through the KTP, which was a fantastic opportunity. I never thought I would do interior design. One of the things maybe I should speak about is my sexuality. When I was at uni, I was in the closet. I hadn't come out. But as I started to work in the design world and stuff, I became more confident in myself, and was that build of confidence through my design, being pushed into the kind of design team leader role. I came out, and that actually helped me break into the stereotype of saying, just because you're gay, you don't have to kind of follow a certain route. And I was like, accept the interior design pathway for myself. And so I did my master's in interior design, which was actually really fantastic because it opened so many doors for my company, because we were only focusing on the displays and not the office as a whole. So it actually changed the way the company focused their sales, focused their kind of purchasing, their marketing. And it was, again, a boost to my confidence as well, to be able to say, I've changed the way this company, who had been doing it for at least 30 years, had changed the way they had perceived their products. And it was not just looking at individual pieces of products, it was looking at it as a whole holistic approach to design. So yeah, it was a great starting point. And I never, that first glimmer of doubt saying, oh, you're only designing displays, was out, because I learned so much about managing. I learned about team building. And that's what I think everyone needs to realize, that you might not get your dream job, but it's what you take from that job that is so much more important. Building those relationships, I was working with a lot of big egos. I used to have a very big ego. Some people might say I still have a big ego. But I've learned to kind of control myself and not be so kind of bashful when I am in kind of scenarios. So there was a lot of learning through that job, and I was with them for just under 10 years, and it was a big learning. The company went under in the end. They went into liquidation, and even through that process, there was so much I learned from it. I'm still in contact with the directors, because I still think I was made redundant, and it was something that every company has to consider sometimes at some point, which is not a nice thing to do. You are getting rid of your staff that you've been working with for years and years, but it's something that some companies do have to face, and you learn from it. I always believe, take every negative as a positive, because there's something to learn in that.
Gosh, there's so many things in there that I want to ask you about, really. What I've picked up on is one of the themes is around confidence.
Yeah.
You say you got a bigger ego, but at the same time, especially when you were starting out, you had a lot of self-doubt. And from speaking to other students, I see that. I see that when you're starting out, it can be quite daunting just showing your work to somebody, let alone applying for a job, putting yourself on the line and inviting people to kind of critique your work and maybe turn you down for a job. What would be your advice to students who are kind of going through that process at the moment?
It's tricky, because you need to have people around you that, for me, it was my boss that really kind of helped me with that confidence. While I was at uni, I mentioned my sexuality. There were a lot of other issues that I was dealing with whilst I was in university, and kind of thought about taking my own life because I didn't feel I should be gay because of my culture, my religion. I'm born in a Catholic family. From where I came from Kenya. There were lots of things that made me think, and also because I did fine art in Kenya, art and design was not perceived as a worthwhile subject. So my entire class went on to become accountants, doctors, dentists, all over the world. And there was me in the UK doing a design degree that, fortunately for me, I had incredible parents that paid for my education to come to the UK. But that dug into me, that confidence element was pulling me down. And I think it's because I started this job, I had that imposter syndrome element, because I started the job thinking, can I do this? Can I really this thing? And it was Nigel and my supervisors, Dave Henley, that started to give me this confidence, this boost that this is your baby, this is your project, take control. And I think when you have people around you to boost your confidence rather than pull you down and showcase all your negatives, that's a huge element to my change in my confidence building. So that's why I love my job now, because I hopefully help to do that for some of our students. It's not always that simple, but I think students need to find the people around them. And also for everyone listening here, is do that for the people around you. You've got to be able to boost the confidence of those around you and help them, because you need that in return. So it is, I would say strongly, is surround yourself with people that help you believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, it's very, very tricky to kind of get ahead, isn't it? So
what's really interesting as well, Jason, what you said about taking the negatives and turning them into positives. Lindsay last week, who did our talk last week, she said a very similar thing.
Right.
You know, you get these knockbacks, which is inevitable in all areas of your life, isn't it? You know, but she said the same thing as you. You know, she sort of turned them around and turned them into positives and learned from them. Could you say a bit more about how you did that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question, because there are so many things that I did wrong or encountered during my earlier years and in the first job. And it was things like certain individuals that had these huge egos that would find every point to kind of put you down. And again, I came into that job at Fairfield Displays, that was the name of the company. My boss had to fight to get a new designer onto the team. They had one designer on board who just did kind of technical drawings for the purchasing department, and that was it. There were no kind of visuals done for clients, nothing of the sort. So he fought really hard to get the KTP and to get me on. So when I first joined, again, it was faced with 5 directors that wanted to try and find every fault in me possible. And one of the piece of advice my boss gave me is, when someone does that to you, it's a mirror. It's reflecting what they are struggling with themselves. And I took that, and I always keep that in my head when I'm facing a difficult person or a challenge. It's a mirror. If I can believe in myself, then allow that person, try and understand that where that person is coming from, because it never comes from malice. People just want the best for themselves and for a situation. So you need to try and understand and put yourself in their shoes and realize that there's a positive there. You just got to look deeper underneath it. And I stood my ground also. I learned to stand my ground. I was a new designer. I was young. Certain individuals had been in the company for many, many years. And for almost an entire year, I took the abuse. I took the kind of put downs all the time. And it was fine because I was learning. I was taking these little things and just learning and learning. And then until one day I realized, actually, I've got some knowledge in this industry. I think I'm confident in what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And I stood up to a certain individual in the company in a very diplomatic way. But I said, if this is the scenario, then let's sit together. Let's have an honest discussion about how we move forward to build this company up together. Let's not battle against each other. And as soon as I did that, the walls broke down and there was a respect for each other. And for the remaining 8 years that I worked there, I never encountered that problem with that particular individual. And it went on to my second job also. I was faced with lots of big egos, lots of projects that didn't go to plan, designs kind of went wrong, and I was to blame for some of them. And again, I remember one of my projects, I messed up big time. It was for a flagship store in Manchester, and I had used the wrong font type. You would think now, come on, like, how can you do that? But it was myself, the sales team, a member were involved, the director, the manager were involved, and none of us had picked up on the small elements. It all got installed. And one of the directors of the company saw the font type and said, you guys need to come and change all the displays. Quite a few thousands were kind of invested in that. But my boss turned around and I was so apologetic. I was traumatized, like, oh my God, I've cost the company all this. And he turned around and he's like, this is a learning for us. Next time we put protocols in place to ensure that this does not happen again. And we've all learned from it. No one deliberately made intentionally wanted to make that mistake. It's a learning. And it's something that you always have to take on board. Even at university, I remember it was my final major project. I was designing this baby buggy. 2 days back, almost 20 years ago, computers took a long time to do renderings, and my computer crashed after 2 days of rendering. And I thought, oh, I've lost all this work. My deadline's like tomorrow. What do I do? I was about to give up. And one of my lecturers sat me down. He's like, sit down, Jason. If you don't get that drawing done, what is the next best alternative? And I said, well, I can do a line drawing. He's like, well, do that then. That's your solution. Do it. And I was like, all right. And there's always a solution.
Yeah.
There's always a solution.
I think it just shows us as well that, you know, we are human and we do things that perhaps we don't get the outcome that we want. But as you say, as long as we learn from that, I think that's the key, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I think have a bit of self-acceptance as well. that we're only human and we all get things wrong. And as you're saying, Jason, it's just part of the learning. You won't do the same thing again. You'll adjust it. But it's so much easier if you've got supportive people around you who recognise that and who aren't blaming you or making you an example in front of everybody else, which can be quite humiliating. So it sounds like you had a great boss and you made sure that you had good people around you as well. You sort of went out of your way to find those good people to be supportive in the workplace.
Totally. And also if you do have, and you will, all of you will come across in your careers certain individuals that are difficult, and maybe you're the difficult one. Sometimes I question myself, am I the difficult one? And I have to assess myself, because you do have to constantly be aware that you potentially are not everyone's cup of tea. And you have to work alongside certain people. And so, like, I remember when I went to my second job, there was a particular individual that I came from the competitor company. So I was seen as a threat straight away. I wasn't, but I was seen as this threat. And a certain manager took a dislike to me straight away and made it very, very aware. And I made it my mission. I said, I will win that person over. And by the end, we were on really close terms, because it was just, you just have to understand where that person is coming from. They mean well, they just have different ways of showing it. So
I've just noticed we've got a question actually in the chat. In the description for your session, we wrote about how you have set up your own business as well, selling French Macaroons. So the question is, what made you open up a macaroon business, and will we ever taste them?
Amel, one day I will bring them in. No, it's a good question. I do not consider myself a chef or a great baker. I've never have. I did it because the first company I was working for, I'd been there for around, I think it must have been seven years. And things had left. The boss that I mentioned to you about, Nigel Fletcher, he had left the company. He went and set up his own kind of small business. And the directors left in the business did not really believe that much in pushing forward. At the time, I took it personally. I thought they just don't want my expertise or my talent or whatever. But actually, they had other plans for the business. And that's kind of where the business went. It went into liquidation. They set up something else later on. But I learned that afterwards. Because of the fact that I wasn't allowed to push the product development within the company, I didn't have an outlet for my designs and my creativity. I didn't have a lot of money in terms of kind of investing into a completely different business that needed a lot of investment. It was product design or interior design. But I had some savings. I was saving up towards buying a house. And I need to actually stress that with the job itself, it paid me enough to have a very, very comfortable lifestyle. Design jobs, you got to work hard for it, but when you get it, you can get a well-paid job and build your way up to that. But it was the creativity that was missing. I wasn't able to put my creativity into my day job. So I was watching Bake Off one day, and they were making the macarons, and I had never tasted one. But I thought, meringue, marzipan, this is heaven. But obviously in Little Shrewsbury, I couldn't find them anywhere. So I thought, oh, let me just try making them. They can't be that hard. And my God, they were bloody difficult. But I kind of approached it like a product design process. And I thought, I need to perfect making the macaron in order to decorate it and design it. So I took on that same approach that I did. I looked at, that's why I never talk about myself as a baker, because I focus my macarons as little products, and each product was a work of art. So every batch I made had a different kind of theme to it, had different designs. Christmas time, I would always kind of change my inspiration. I would go around looking at the retail shops, looking at what fashion was doing, what architecture was doing, and kind of influence that into this little macaron. So I was taking all my creativity and just pushing it into the macarons. And I only did it for friends and family. And a few people were like, you need to start selling these because they're really good. I did start to look at the made in Shropshire markets, the local markets. And it was quite difficult to get on because they're very fussy on who they take on. It's a very artisan style approach. And I thought, oh, am I going to be able to do this? So anyway, I had this interview with them. And they were blown away, and they accepted me on. So I started doing these made in Shropshire markets. My name got out. At the time I was doing it, I was, I think, the only macaron supplier, bespoke design macaron supplier in Shropshire. And it was a great experience. I learned so much, but what I really learned from it was the business side of things. I had to set up my business. I was the director, I was the creative director, I was the marketing, I was the accountant, I was the purchaser, I was everything, the health and safety, the inspections had to be done on all my hygiene certificates. So there was a lot of learning from that little business that I did. But it did kind of take over, and I was working a full-time job during the daytime where I wasn't getting to be as creative. I would come home and I would work till 2, 3 in the morning, kind of baking, decorating, packing, posting. And I would hardly see my partner. And he kind of pointed out to me, he's like, this is great that you're doing this, but we don't get to spend any time together. And is it really worth it? And I had to sit down and actually question myself. I am a workaholic. When I'm on my own, I work far too much. And sometimes it's good, it's a good thing. And that's what I did at university, was the same thing, because I was going through all these kind of mental issues with my sexuality and the suicide thoughts and stuff. Design was my focus. I threw everything into design, and I kind of wanted to prosper in that. And I was doing the same thing almost with the macaron thing. I wasn't fulfilling my day job with my creativity, so I threw it into the macaron job. And I thought, I'm not achieving what I want to do, is spend time with my partner and enjoy my life. And my partner's actually taught me one massive kind of learning about balance of work life and personal life. And I think I've got that in the past few years. We all need to enjoy the people around us. At the end of the day, a job, especially when you're working for a company, you are just a number. And you need to be good to yourself. You need to respect yourself as well. So the macaron job was brilliant. I have stopped doing them. I only do them on certain occasions. So maybe at Christmas time, I might bring some into the classroom, guys. But it's something that I really love doing. And I still do it. I still have my website. I would love to go back to doing Fernandes macarons at some point. But at the minute, I'm learning. There's a lot for me to learn in the academic world as well. So
it strikes me that you've got lots of competing priorities, as we all do. So on one hand, it's the creativity and wanting to satisfy that. On another hand, you had making a living through the design role. And then your personal life as well, the 3 things that could pull you in entirely different directions. And just going back to Lindsay from last week, she was also talking about this balance between running a business and being creative. And she said for her, it's a sort of 10%, 90% split when she's running her business. But the creative side of it is really what drives her. So I think it's quite interesting really for us all to have a think about what's most important to us and what's going to kind of drive us in our career, and where we're willing to take our compromises and where we're not. Yeah, there was something I was going to ask a bit ago, actually. just sort of rewinding back to the KTP interview that you had. It sounds like you did absolutely amazing to well, it was an hour's interview and it lasted for 2 hours. So I'm just wondering whether you got any tips as to how to do a good interview, really, and what would impress them, especially bearing in mind that it wasn't your dream job in the first place, and you did a bit of prep, I think. So do you want to just say a bit about that?
Yeah. So I like I said, it wasn't my dream job. I went in there thinking, because they asked for so many requirements. The KTP is a very kind of I would say tedious element in terms of requirements, and I always thought, and I learned this at university, is whatever you put your mind to, and I've done that actually even when I was in school, I would give it my all. Whatever I would do, I would make sure I gave it my all. So that's why I went and did my research with various estate agents. I remember talking to the cleaners at some of these estate agents to just understand how displays are cleaned, so I would get a better understanding. So when I got to the interview, I did my research on the company, and I got to know more about that industry, and I tried to find a love for that industry even before I went for the interview. So when I got to the interview, I had a lot to talk about. My portfolio, however, was something that we spoke about a lot, and the diversity in, again, the projects that I had in my portfolio allowed us to, the directors and the supervisors picked a lot of questions for me from my portfolio. So it was a great talking point about everything I had done at university. And what I did also think about was, how could this company improve? And it's difficult because you don't want to come across arrogant. You don't want to come across as slating the company's products. But I wanted to discuss how could they advance into different opportunities. And I think maybe that is what Nigel kind of picked up on me, because he was all about improving that business. And we just landed up talking about all these different things. So I would strongly suggest that if you get the opportunity to go for an interview, I applied for quite a few jobs and only got 4 interviews. And again, every time the 4 that I went for before that one, as soon as you state that you're Kenyan and the element of visa pops into people's heads, the attitude changes. Never take it as a personal attack on you. It is the circumstances of the way things are. But I remember when I got to that interview and I stated the fact that I was Kenyan, and I remember Dave Henley he turned around and said, "Yeah, that's fine." And I thought, wow. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's absolutely fine. And that almost gave me this little boost of confidence to believe in myself in that moment during that interview. And it was amazing, because they probably bought my positivity. I felt their positivity, and we landed up talking. And I remember one of the supervisors had to drop me to the train station afterward, because we'd gone on talking for too long. All the staff members had left and no one was there to book a cab or anything of the sort. So I was like, all right, I'll try and go and find a cab. He's like, no, I'll drop you. And I got to the station. I said, well, hopefully I will see you again. And he's like, I'm not really allowed to tell you, but you're through to the next round, so you'll be fine. But yeah, just try and investigate and have a great portfolio to talk about when you're in those interviews.
Yeah, so research and a good portfolio go a long way. And yeah. I'm just surprised at the level of research that you did. If you actually attended, or you went along to different estate agencies and spoke with the cleaners, it just shows what length you have to go to. But I'm sure you felt it was a safe bet that you'd perhaps get the job if you'd been chatting with them for 2 hours.
Well.
But also there's an important point here about tenacity, isn't there, and just keeping going. You had 4 interviews. you got the final interview, you got the job off the back of it, and you applied for many other jobs as well. And it's quite easy to feel deflated when you don't hear back, and you've got to resubmit your application form, rewrite it, redo your CV, and to just pick yourself up and keep going. But that's exactly what it takes, I think, isn't it right? Yeah.
Totally. And one of the things, like when I was on the opposite side of the interviewing, where I was then interviewing for people to come and join my team, it's that element that you might be a really strong designer, you might have a fantastic portfolio, but it was about the link and the connection with other members of that company, of that team. And one of the things Nigel Fletcher told me is when I started to talk about myself and talk about my kind of history and stuff like that, he said he knew straight away I was going to fit in with everyone working upstairs. And it's about fitting into a team. So it's not personal if you don't get the job after you've been interviewed or anything of that sort. You got to just keep pushing along. It's demoralizing. It's hard, especially when you're so dependent on it. But try and take some positive from every interview.
I think we've got a question, haven't we, Claire? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, a question from Reese. He asks, what led you to decide in a change of career and why education?
Right. Good question, Reese. I'll be perfectly honest. I never, ever thought I would become a teacher. And I never thought I would actually enjoy it. It was, again, down to the connections I made with the university. And it was a previous lecturer who used to work with us, Rob Cooksey, who spoke to me once. I employed a new designer into my team. It was through a similar KTP with the second company I was with. And I linked up with Rob Cooksey again. And he started to talk to me about teaching. And he said, why don't you come and just have a chat with some of the students, come and do some work on a project with them and see what you think. And I was like, all right. I was like, but Rob, I was like, I'm really not feeling this. I was like, I'm probably not very good with students anyway. And as soon as I got in front of the class and started talking to each student about their individual projects, there was something about it not being my design, but helping someone else build their design up. And in my second job, I inherited this kind of design team, which wasn't the strongest design team. I had a few designers that, again, didn't believe in themselves. They had a manager who put them down a lot. And I thought, I've got this opportunity now to build this team up. And again, I took Nigel Fletcher's approach to my team and did my best to build their confidence in themselves and what they brought to the company. I believe every single person in a company is an equal cog. No one is better than the other. Whether you're the manager, director, cleaner, you are an equal cog in that. And that's what I've always dealt with. So by doing that and helping my team build their confidence, I thought, this is what you do with the students. Yes, there's a lot for me to learn if I do take this job on in terms of the academic side of things. And I did take the job after doing some few sessions with the students. And I thought this is a great opportunity. I have to be honest, the pay was a massive element to that as well. The holiday allowance was absolutely fantastic. But it was that thing of I was tired of working for clients that really just were interested in profit. Nothing wrong in that. My bosses were interested in the profit, and you were dealing with small petty things. I remember one client, we went to do the installation of their offices, and one of the desks had a tiny little chip on it, and kicked up a big fuss, and I just thought, it's a desk. Like, I didn't say that to him, obviously, but I'd reached that point where I thought there's more to life than just kind of designing aesthetically pleasing things. And it's about helping others. So I have no regrets about taking this job. Honestly, I think of myself very, very lucky to be in this position. There's still so much for me to learn. There was also an element of imposter syndrome when I came into this job, because I had been in this display industry for almost 10 to 12 years. I was the manager. I had been working for the biggest company within that industry. Everyone came to me for advice on that industry. Started the job at the university, and it was like, whoa, there's so much about design that I have not looked at for so many years. And I thought, I have to brush myself up on all this knowledge. Fortunately for me, I had an incredible team again, with Reese and Dave, who helped me along that journey and have also built that confidence in myself to actually be able to do this job. I still think I have a long way to go, and we all still keep learning. So the change from being the designer in industry to the academic world was something I had to take a while to consider. But as soon as I did a few tests, I did feel this is what I need to do in life. So very lucky to be able to do that.
I'm just really surprised that you felt imposter syndrome coming to the university with this long career in design. And I've spoken to you a few times now, and hearing you speak today just shows how good a public speaker you are. But I think I guess it shows that we can all feel like we're a fish out of water at times, and all feel that we don't quite belong or fit in, or we put up these barriers in our head as to why we can't do this, that, or the other, and they're not necessarily there. And if they are there, well, we can overcome those, can't we? And we can learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when you first started, Jace, and you did that session for our Saturday club group.
Yeah, the Saturday classes, yes.
Imposter syndrome just did not exist. You know, I would not have. It just wouldn't have occurred to anyone. It's this voice in your head, isn't it? I think a lot of the time. That, but as you say, Lisa, I think we all kind of get it at some point. But absolutely, you overcame it for sure. And you show it.
But no, it is. And what was great is obviously when you start teaching at the university, you have to do the PG cert. And that was a massive learning for myself as well. I learned a lot about teaching through that. But there were lots of other people on the PG cert that mentioned about they felt the imposter syndrome. They were coming from being nurses for years, and then coming into this world, you are not in your comfort zone. And sometimes you may know everything about something else. Like I remember the first time I was teaching some software, I said to Reese, I was like, I can do this in like 5 seconds, but trying to teach it, you have to explain every single detail. It's a change, it's different. You can do it yourself so quickly, but explaining it is so different. I thought, I can't do wrong for these students. There's that pressure of making sure that you're not going to do wrong for the students. So
everybody's a work in progress, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've got another question, actually.
Yeah, we have. It's kind of more about your creative side, I guess. Have you got a favourite designer, and perhaps someone that you may have taken inspiration from?
It's a good question. I don't have a favourite designer, because I find I do look at different designers in different ways. So yeah, if I was to think about, I remember there's a designer in London called Lee Broom, and at that particular time I was really obsessed with his work, I was still in industry, and I came across his work at the NEC actually quite a few years ago. And I followed all his work, and then took on, there was London Design Week, one particular, he had an exhibition. I thought, oh, okay, I'll go along and see this. And I remember getting to this exhibition. It was a beautifully installed space. He had these crystal bulbs that he's a product designer / interior designer. And the way it was displayed was all in like wooden crates, but they were suspended to the beauty of the crystal against all the kind of the wood and timber around it. There was sawdust on the floor. You walked through the sawdust. And I was just like taken aback. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then it was a really tiny exhibition, a small little place in Shoreditch. And I looked at the end of the room and I saw him standing there. And I was thinking, oh God, I didn't think like the designer would actually be there. I don't know why. And I got really like flustered, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, I want to go talk to him, but I'm really nervous. And I thought, just get a grip and go and talk. So I approached him and started to have a chat with him. And he was lovely. He was really, really nice. Gave me some advice on how to just take big steps when you're in those scenarios. Is kind of, he did the same. He won an award with Vivienne Westwood through fashion, but actually then became a product designer. And why I liked his style is because he, again, came from fashion, turned it into product design, and then into interior and furniture. And this is this element of, when you're a creative person, it doesn't matter what you are doing. You got to put all your creativity into whatever you are doing. Don't pigeonhole yourself. And that's why I did the Macarons, because to me, it was a product. It was a design. Whether it was edible or non-edible, it didn't matter. It was about that creativity. So I aspire to designers who can link that creativity to everything around them. And what I've learned actually through coming to work at the university is the importance of social aspects, the environment and things like that. When you're in industry, you sometimes forget that. You forget the importance of what is truly matters in this world, because you're so hung up on those profit margins and those sales. And the university allows us to delve deeper into these projects that all our students have, incredible projects they're working on. And it's so much fun doing that. So in terms of a favorite designer, I move from here to there. My interior in my apartment is designed in very different ways. So I like bringing my own kind of African heritage into things as well. I think it's good to bring in that your historical and cultural elements to it. So there are certain designers in Kenya that I think are incredible, but don't get the platform to showcase their work to the world. So yeah, sorry, that's disappointing, but I don't have a favorite designer.
No, well, I think you answered that really well, and we've got a real sense of you and where your inspirations do come from, which is a mixture of places. Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to what you were saying about working in product design and how disappointing it sometimes it was, because you weren't able to express your creativity, but you found other avenues to do that, which is really interesting. And just going back to product design, you have spoken a little bit about the downside at times. I'm just wondering what you enjoyed about it. What was the best bits about being a product designer?
Great question. I remember the first time I was walking through London and I passed an estate agent, and my displays that I had designed were in that window. And it was such a small little win, but it felt so good to say, I designed that, and that was being sold in that shop. And it was a small thing just to say that I remember having a chat with my manager, because there had been some mix up on my team leader role, and they were under the impression that I wanted more money. And this is probably not what a lot of people say, but money's never been my driving force. I'm not sure why. Maybe I come from a privileged background that I didn't have to worry too much about money, and I was very lucky for that. But to me, it was about that element of seeing my design produced and manufactured and in place. I remember the first interior job I did, I went on site during the installation and seeing it complete, and kind of the client so happy with what they had in front of them. To me, it was that's the best bit about design, seeing your ideas being brought into reality. There's a lot about product design and interior design that it is hard work. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of hard work that goes with it. And when you're working in a company, you've got a lot of different ideas being thrown back and forth. But it's that element of saying, I did that. And I was always driven, not by money, but achieving better and better with my creativity.
I think we've got, I'm just aware of time, and I think we've got one more question.
Yeah. So one from Adam. What do you find is the best way to make connections with people in the industry you want to work within? And I guess from an employer's point of view, what would you like to see?
That is a great question. And so sometimes, and I was thinking about this, when we employ new designers or new members of our companies, sometimes people are very scared to pick up the phone and talk. And an email, yes, is important, but you lose personality. So for me, I was able to chat like I do what I'm doing now. And it was building that rapport with people. The advice Lee Broom gave me was always, if you're ever in a scenario where there is a connection, make it. Don't be scared to make that connection. What have you got to lose, right? So if you've ever got an opportunity to make a connection, do it. But again, it's that element of not being too forceful. Be your genuine self, that you want to learn from this person. You want to learn from them. It's not always about just give me a job, give me a job. It's about taking that appreciation of the person that you're talking to. My suppliers and we built a great rapport because I always got to know them, got to know their families, about their families. And you basically are allowed to then make these personal connections, and they get to know about you. So I would say personality is very, very key. And you can do that even if you're not the most talkative person or the most kind of extrovert person. You can still build rapport. I've met people who are really quiet and really sensitive, but they speak such knowledge and intelligence that you get to know them. So respect the people you're talking to.
It's really good advice, absolutely. I'm just aware of time. We've come up to 3 o'clock. So this is really last chance to ask any questions. I've just posted something into the chat, which actually looks quite overwhelming. 3 web links. The first one is to KTPs. It's something that Jason mentioned right at the beginning. And that was his way into industry. KTPs still happen. So the link is there to the team at the university that organises those. Secondly, the workplace. The workplace have links with lots of employers and advertise different types of placements and jobs. So that might be something worth looking at as well. And then finally, a link to Creative Futures, our series of talks, of which this is part. And just to say, please do come along to some of the others. We've got another one happening next week, same time, same place. And we've got David Longworth coming from the BBC to talk about the different roles within the BBC, some of which you'd expect, like kind of journalism and production, but there's an awful lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect as well, behind the scenes, technical roles. And he's going to be talking about training routes within the BBC. So please do come to that one too. Any final questions? Doesn't look like we have. So can I just finish by saying thank you so much, Jason. You've shared an enormous amount of your life with us today. And I feel really fortunate to have heard all of that, especially as some of it, especially when you're a little bit younger, might have been quite hard for you to share. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the tips that you shared with us as well. And I can see that actually there is a question. Is there a link to your site to view your work?
My design work? No, I don't. Sorry. I don't have a design website, which is really poor of me, actually. But you can probably find some stuff on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn profile, actually. There might be some stuff there. So.
I guess you're busy being a teacher now, aren't you?
Yeah,
learning how to do that.
But no, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. I really, really appreciate it, and for allowing me to share my story.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Jason. Cheers.
Thank you.
And thank you for all coming to this session. Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.